Hey. So, what's new?
Tell me everything about your podcast.
Oh, okay, I can do that. So, I've played soccer for all my life. Leanna and I were like, we wanted to do something that's going to get us in the sports industry, but, it's so hard to go in-house or anything like that right after school. So, our thought process was to start a newsletter. Just talks about soccer and just to keep us in the industry because we know most likely, like I said, we're not going to go straight into it after. So we just started the newsletter, and then our end goal was to do a podcast, which I guess we executed today. So we're hoping to, just that this is just our end in the industry. That's what our first goal is. But, you never know where it's going to take us.
I think that's so smart. And I think a lot of people aren't thinking like that at all. Do you perhaps have more respect for female sports podcasters who came before you after starting yours?
If you're referring to yourself, yes. I think in general, here's my thing. I think in general, I think women in male sports fields is a huge thing because we don't talk about women's soccer really. Quite frankly, we don't. Not that we don't care. Obviously, women's soccer is a huge thing, and we talk about it.
Alex Morgan.
Right. Yes. Some of our highlights, but it's more of women in the male space. For example, you in baseball. That's what I'm saying. I think it's not women in general, just women in not even women in male fields, which that's a trend. But but women who have knowledge about male sports and talk about it, I think were really good for the program in that sense.
And how do you feel about that? Because whenever I was working at Coca-Cola, and I made a comment about how being in a male-dominated industry was so hard, and all the women in the room were like, what are you talking about? And these were all the general counsel for Coca-Cola at that time, the division I was in. And they're like, what are you talking about? Our whole team is women. You were on a call with the entire general counsel, and it is all women. And then, honestly, I've had maybe one experience with a VP of a sports agency where he told me your best chance of being successful as a baseball agent would be to marry a player. Other than that, nobody has said anything mean to me, who's actually worth their salt. Other social media comments don't count.
Right.
But I've honestly had a really phenomenal experience, especially at Miami and in Miami. Agreed. And in baseball, where people have been generally supportive and also really encouraged me to leverage being a woman and leverage some of the experience I have from my past to be a better attorney.
100%. I think it's twofold. First of all, I think being in Miami gives you a different market for people. I think it's a lot different than the other parts of the U.S. in general, truly, about with sports. We're a huge sports hub. I think also the thing that we realize that that other people don't is we're very educated about our specific sports. We don't go into a room thinking we're women in sports fields, and I think that's where the divide is, because I think a lot of people that genuinely I don't vibe with are women heads of sports teams or whatever that make it all about being a woman in sports, and I think that's hurting us, and you're so knowledgeable about baseball and baseball arbitration and all that in general, and I'm very knowledgeable at soccer. I think we know that going into it, so we don't think we're the odd one out in the room. We just go in with our knowledge and do that, and I think we're surrounded by a community, especially at UM and UM Law, that encourages that. But I think we're just confident in where we are, and I think that's the difference. I don't think, and that's where other people don't recognize that. I think it's us in general, and it's us having the confidence in that, and not other people saying, oh, how do you go in a room being a woman and a male? We don't think about that, and that's the difference.
And I think that on social media, you're seeing a lot of women trying to build their own brands, which I do the same thing.
For you, exactly.
Trying to build my brand. I'm trying to connect with people I used to know, or not used to know, I still know, but maybe we haven't spoken since I started law school from my old sports career. And honestly, I would never sometimes I do, and it's valid if I do, talking about something that a man specifically said to me or some of the maybe misogynistic comments that I get on social media, but I'm not going to just dog a man because he's a man,
right.
Especially in sports. Granted, I've swung a baseball bat probably less than 10 times in my entire life. I never played softball. I will never know what it feels like to play in the major leagues ever in my entire life. I'll never know what it feels like to play in the minor leagues. I'll never know what it feels like to play JUCO baseball.
But who cares, because you have the knowledge.
And that's the thing, where having the knowledge is so important, but also not, I don't even know how to say the word, but not lowering your male counterparts just because of they're a man.
Right.
And I would never want to do that, because I wouldn't want someone to treat me like that because I'm a woman. Like you said, I've had phenomenal experiences, and honestly, a lot of my bosses and a lot of my mentors, male and female, have all been very encouraging, saying, okay, listen, and baseball's a little bit different because I'll never be able to walk into a room, like you said, with soccer. You've played soccer your entire life.
Right.
I've never played baseball. I don't know what it feels like to go out and play as catcher or play any position on the entire field. I don't even know what it feels like to hit a home run.
Right.
And still, just having people who hopefully potentially will trust me and know that, I didn't get drafted and make my debut in the major leagues, but law school was my major leagues. Law school was my minor league experience. And then me practicing is going to be the majors. And I don't know if I'll ever have that major league debut moment. Probably not. But it's you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you just constantly put down male counterparts, especially in not even a male dominated field, but a male specific sport.
Agreed. 100%. And I think too, that's, like I said, that's where the divide is. And you and I go into it knowing that, listen, the reason we're here is you go baseball, obviously, it's all male. I mostly talk about men's soccer. That's a thing. We recognize and honor those. And I think another thing too, which is interesting to me, is that we like you said, we go into a room knowing we know this is us, we know what we're talking about, and we're not going to sit there and be we're a woman, because it doesn't matter. We just know what we know, and that's why we're here. And it's interesting too, I admire you so much because you're I think a lot of people, which annoys me, equate content creators with people that don't know what they're talking about, not even in specifically in general, and they don't get using your platform to tell people about what you do, what you know, and that's gotten you so far. You've had so many interesting internships and jobs. No, but it's just another thing in the industry. You worked for Wasserman. That's a sports job, and you know what? A lot of your success too comes from your content, and I think
Wasserman 1000% did.
And I think people that think that people that create content are just trying to be influencer stuff, is there's just so missing the mark on what you're trying to do with your platform than recognizing that you know a lot about your field more than most people that actually play the sport.
Yeah.
And that's what you're just trying to promote that. So.
And honestly, whenever it comes to content creation for me, I could care less if I ever made a single dollar off of a brand deal. I know that whenever I start practicing, I probably won't be able to do brand deals just because I'm going to be at a firm. I don't want to risk getting conflicted out of a single case because I did a brand deal.
Right.
For what? $200, $400, it's not worth it to me. However, with knowing the industry and everything like that, knowing the industry was what got me my job at Wasserman, because I was able to walk up to Michael Calvin Jones, who used to have his own agency, started his own social media agency. I had multiple friends who were signed and represented by him. Was talking to him at Counseling Creators last year, told him how I would have always loved to work for Wasserman. I had been in a lot of the same rooms as their baseball team, and he basically said, email me your resume. I did. Nothing came of it for a while.
Right.
And this was February of last year. And then in August, I got an email asking me to interview to be on their team sports legal team as an intern. Amazing experience. And that's still an unpaid internship with a name like Wasserman, and the experience I got and being able to work with the clients that Wasserman has. is still something that will probably 5 years down the road will still get me jobs in sports.
Still have an impact,
I mean,
for
honestly,
sure.
probably 20 years down the road. Like, Wasserman's such a big name. I always wanted to work there. I was like fangirling every day, taking pictures of my Outlook logo. I loved working there.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's stuff like that gives you those opportunities that people don't recognize. Like, that comes from you promoting your brand and like networking, and like obviously they're not one and the same. Always like you, like at the minimum, you making a TikTok, but that gets you to where you were. Like like if you weren't gonna put yourself out there like that, whether that be on TikTok, like in person networking, like you would never have gotten that if you weren't gonna network like that.
Well, I also had my older sister is the best. She was an OG content creator in 2012 and the most creative person I've ever met. I never called myself creative until honestly like 2 years ago because my sister is so creative and she was the best. So my sister was so creative and she was like an OG content creator. And so whenever I started posting content, I was always trying to mimic my sister. And then after I was trying to mimic her, like I always knew every thing I post my sister might think is dumb because she just has such a great eye for it. And she isn't harsh on me, but she really just cares about what I do and cares that what I'm doing is, she sees the bigger picture so much better than I ever could. So that was really helpful to me because I realized that like quality of content and any content that I create can be used for a brand no matter what.
Exactly.
I'm not doing some sort of videos that people are like, what is this? Like, I always make sure my hair's done, my makeup's done. Like, it sounds dumb, but it also puts me at a disadvantage because I can't just make content all the time.
Right.
But I really am super brand focused, and it's not even my brand, but like external brands. I don't know.
No, but I think in general, listen, like that, like what you do and in general, like us being where we are, like in the sports industry is such a, and like I don't want to call us role models, but more for people to look up to. Like, I mean, we do mentor people in the law school, and we were picked by professors to mentor us. So I think just in general, us being in the industry and getting to do that is a good example for those to come. So I'm excited to see what's in store for us.
I'm so freaking proud of you.
I'm proud of you.
Obsessed with you, and I love you, and you are my favorite person ever.
Stop. Love you too.
I can't wait to listen to every single episode of the Footy Files.
Thanks. Well, thanks,
It's
guys.
endorsed by every single person.
Well, thanks, guys, for listening.
Thank you.